Beginning for the most beneficent, I'd like to welcome all our mu'min and mu'minat who have decided to join us again for the second Majlis in this series on the topic of the Ashab of Imam Zaman, Imam al-Hussein, that will be delivered by Shaykh al-Islam al-Muslimin, Maulana Hamza Sodagar. I would like Brother Shayan Hedri to begin the Majlis with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Shayan, you may start.
Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها والنفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بتقواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Next up, I'd like to invite another young brother to recite the source for us. Samar and Zahir, if you're ready.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, Zahir.
Okay. अहले अज़ा ये चाँद मुहर्रम का चाँद है अहले अज़ा ये चाँद मुहर्रम का चाँद है निकला गमे हुसैन के मौसम का चाँद है ये फातिमा के लाल के मातम का चाँद है पशे अज़ा बिछाओ बड़े गम का चाँद है इस चांद में अली का दुलारा हुआ शहीद इस चांद में रसूल का प्यारा हुआ शहीद अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है घर में सजाओ परचमे अब्बा से बावफा और उसके पास लाके रखो शह का ताजिया पढ़ते रहो हुसैन की गुर्बत का मरसिया था जिसका इंतजार वो दिन फिर से आ गया उससे को शहजादी को नहलाएंगे बशे अज़ा पे मादर हसनैन आएंगी अहले अज़ा ये चाँद मुहर्रम का चाँद है अहले अज़ा ये चाँद मुहर्रम का चाँद है निकला है जब ये चाँद सफर में हुसैन है असगर को लेके गोद में शबीर रो पड़े कहने लगे ये चाँद मेरे लाल देख ले इस चांद में न छोड़ेंगे अहले जफा तुझे मारेंगे ऐसी चीज से तुझको अहले शर हैवान भी लड़सते हैं जो तीर देख कर अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है अब्बास को गले से लगाया हुसैन ने कासिम को अपने पास बिठाया हुसैन ने अकबर को भी करीब बुलाया हुसैन ने फिर गम का चांद सबको दिखाया हुसैन कहने लगी करीब अब अर्ज़ करबला है चांद मेरा करबला में डूब जाएगा। अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है। अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है। मोनिस न बच सका कोई यावर न बच सका। कासिम न बच सके अली अकबर न बच सका। 32 साल वाला बड़ा दर न बच सका। हद हो गई कि नन्हा सा सग़र न बच सका। इस चांद में उजड़ गई खेती रसूल की। इस चांद में लुटी है कमाई बतूल की। अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है। अहले अज़ा ये चांद मुहर्रम का चांद है। सलवात
Thank you for your recitation. It really warms my heart to see, the youngest members of our community coming together on the first share of Imam Hussein. This is the one true message. This is the one true path. As mentioned in the Majalis yesterday in the Azakhana, there's the University of Imam Hussein. There's plenty for all of us to learn, regardless of age, regardless of any specific category that we belong to. So without further ado now, I'd like to invite another young member of our community, Brother Muhammad Kamal Rizvi, to recite the Mashiach for us. Kamal.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Bar Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. आज भी ज़ैनब की आती हुसैन आज भी ज़ैनब की आती हुसैन तेरा चेहरा घुटनियों के मुश्किल में गिर कर मैं
Like Mel, there was just a slight issue with your audio. I tried to sort it out, but inshallah we can get it fixed for tomorrow. But may Allah award your effort anyways. And now I would also like to invite Brother Samad Kazmi to present a summary of the Majlis that the Agha recited yesterday. So Samad, are you ready?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad bulantar salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My brothers, sisters, and our respected Agha, Assalamu alaikum. I offer my condolences to all of you on the second day of Muharram, and my special condolences to the Imam of our time, as Ajallahu Ta'ala Farjah Sharif. Today, I am going to go through Agha's previous lecture in a few points. Agha's chosen topic is the companions of 12th Imam in the 21st century. We chose to be the companions of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, and we are moving towards Imam, inshallah. There is a direct connection between the movement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and the reappearance of our 12th Imam alayhi salam. We dwell in the 21st century, and as an emerging youth, we need to understand our developing ideas, thoughts, and characters, who we are and who we want to be, because devils and satans of this world are presenting wrong, filthy ideas. But we are lucky to have access to the riches of the Quran, Ahl al-Bayt, great men and women in history. We got to use these resources to form our own character and to have a better vision for our future. Islam is a religion with a clear vision, and to understand it, we need to understand and learn what Imam al-Mahdi is doing to get to that vision. For instance, technological advancement is one of the vision of Islam. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was not simply unhappy, but he had vision in mind for future. He doesn't only protest, but he had a solution to it. Agha mentioned spirituality as a foundation of falah. A person's realization that he is the creation and subject of Almighty, and he is accountable for everything he does. Islam's vision has more beauty, beautiful scenery, beautiful architecture, technological advancement. The development of world and the vision of Islam is developing the right ideology of Islam. Now, may Allah guide us to fully understand the vision of Islam and vision of our 12th Imam, Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. Thank you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Thank you so much, Samad, for your summary. And it is very important that we listen to him, and also that he does this, because it proves that we're listening keenly. There are a lot of takeaways. Sometimes you might lose attention or whatever, but I urge you to listen, because the topic of conversation is extremely relevant, and there will not be a point where you will be lost, as the Sheikh does a wonderful job guiding us through his points, through his Majlis. So without further ado, I would like to invite Shaykh al-Islam al-Hujjat al-Islam al-Muslimin, Maulana Agha Hamza Sodagar, to begin the Majlis for us, please. Thank you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. عظم الله أجورنا
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
الله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, let's recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For his health and well-being, let's recite another salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And inshallah, each and every one of us becomes a true and close companion of Imam al-Mahdi. Let's recite a third one louder, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. We thank Allah for giving us this opportunity, and we ask Him to help us take it and use it to the best way possible and the best result in terms of pleasing Allah and pleasing the Imam of our time, inshallah. I will encourage us to think of ourselves in the camp of Imam al-Hussein, and also to realize that the camp of Imam al-Hussein is the camp of Imam al-Mahdi. So we are in the tent of Imam al-Mahdi, inshallah. Think of yourself in that way and try to see how you fit and what all you need to do. Those are important thoughts that are supposed to be our regular thought, part of our regular thought process during the time of ghaibah or occultation. What I'd like to discuss regarding the topic today is another aspect of the companions of the Imam in the 21st century. We live during a time that we notice very easily differences between this time, this day and age, and the time and the day and age in which, for instance, Imam al-Hussein had his movement and had his uprising against Yazid. One of those differences is the advancement of technology, the advancement of our understanding of the material world. Unfortunately, in many ways, there is advancement in our understanding of the unseen as well, but in comparison to the developments in the area of our understanding of the material world, it's far, far behind. Globally speaking, overall, what we see is that there is a lot of advancement. We have learned a lot more about the material realm we live in.
I'm extremely sorry to interrupt. It's just that the people are having a little bit of trouble hearing you. They're saying the volume is a little bit low, so could you possibly move your mic a little bit so we can hear you better?
Is this better?
Yeah, I think that I can hear it much better, but I guess I'll let you know. I'll give you. But yeah,
okay,
much clearer.
Recite another salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. What we see, one of the differences between the era we live in and the times of the presence of the Imams, or even a couple of centuries ago, is the advancements in the material aspect of human beings on earth. Our advancements in those areas are not comparable to our advancements in the spiritual area, in our understanding of Allah, in our understanding of Islam, in our understanding of the hereafter, in our understanding of the unseen part of this world, the ghaib of this world. There is further understanding that we clearly see. There are developments in the area of understanding the Quran on a deeper level. Some of the developments, for example, the tafsir of Allama Tabatabai, Tafsir al-Mizan, is a new development that is something that we don't find a few or couple centuries ago. The discussions in fiqh that we find today are discussions that are not found a couple centuries ago. The discussions that we find in some of the other disciplines, the discussions on hadith that we, for example, find in the Hawza, are a lot more advanced, and some of the topics that are being discussed today compared to even not a couple centuries ago, but 20 years ago, just a couple of decades ago, the discussions we are having are much more advanced. That is something that is noticeable. However, compared to the advancements that are made in our lifestyle due to technology, just a few decades ago, the internet was something in the early stages of its development. People were barely on there, and today pretty much everything is connected together through the internet, including the session that we are currently having. This session would not be possible 3 decades ago. We didn't have this. 2 decades ago, although it might have been somewhat possible, it was a lot more difficult, and more than that, most people were just not familiar or interested in it. Everyone was so accustomed to the common forms of Majalis that you have to be present in person. 10 years ago, if you talked about having a session on Zoom, even though that technology was somewhat available, people were just not ready to have that type of session. They would say, no, we need to fly somebody in, have an in-person Majlis. And now it's become a lot more acceptable, it's become a lot more common, it's become a lot more normal for people to do this. And that's one example of the changes that have happened in human life based on the developments in the sciences and technologies, which are, I group them and categorize them as our developments, our advancement in the material aspect of life. We've made some serious advancements. These advancements, what is related to the information technology, as they say, or IT, computers, and all of that, AI, and whatever else is developed there. What we see in terms of the hardware that we use in life, the automobile industry, the electric cars that are developing rapidly, where the electricity that's used in it is produced in various ways, and they're working on developing those. Just the hardware of life, the things we use, the things we're accustomed to, what our home looks like, what our home feels like, the temperatures. Today, the temperatures outside vary, but we have devices that turn the temperature within our indoor environment to our desired temperatures. 100 years ago, that was a dream perhaps, or maybe not even a dream. Nobody dreamed of it. They didn't even think it's possible. The water that we consume, that we very, very easily just go to the restroom in our house, take a shower, the water that's available, the temperature of that water, and everything that's available, the skincare products, the self-care products, all the things that are available to us, the food products, the fresh produce that we get from so many different places in the world that are transported using these technologies that make it possible. 50 years ago, that transport was not possible because the fruit and the food would rot by the time it arrives. The speed at which we're able to transport material and the conditions we can create in that freight are such that makes that possible. You can have fresh fruit that was picked today in whatever part of the world, delivered later today in a different part, completely different part of the world. All that's made possible with these are examples I'm throwing out. Our understanding on a molecular and submolecular level of this material realm have allowed us to develop something called nanotechnology, which is basically being able to measure things on a nano scale, and on that scale try to see what is more desirable and what is less desirable. And that has allowed us to produce things that are unimaginable, clothing products that control the odor that the body naturally produces, or the absorption of that, or the cleanliness of the clothes, and so many other things. These are just examples that I'm a little familiar with, and there's so much more. This is an area that the world has changed in, and we notice that as companions of the Imam in the 21st century, one of the things that we need to develop is our understanding of all of that. By that, I don't mean that we need to develop, I don't know, something called, as we call it, the Islamic understanding of that. So what would that sound like? The Islamic understanding, the so-called Islamic understanding of these things. What we would probably mean by that is, I don't know, add a little spiritual touch to that. That's not what I mean. What I mean by that is that we need to, as the Muslim community, as the Shia community, as the believers that are developing themselves into the soldiers of the 12th Imam, we have got to be on the forefront of understanding the material realm itself, understanding it and using the system that God has put in place in the material realm to develop better technologies. This is what we need to do as companions of the 12th Imam. I need to elaborate on this a little more. So first, the part of what is it that we need to understand. What I mean is we've got to be getting involved in some of the areas of the sciences and technologies that seem to be less, or our community seems to be less involved in. One area just generally is just being scientists, right, that do research on the material realm, research in the medical field, research in the chemical field, research in whatever area of life, in biology outside of the human body, which is not referred to as the medical field, just biology, looking at marine biology, for example, studying that, research in that. Those are areas that our community seems not to be very interested in. Physics and the brains of the science of, or the discipline of physics, you don't see too many Muslims there. when it comes to aerospace, the sciences related to that, which is the understanding part of things, and then the technologies related to that, we don't see the presence of Muslims. That's not something that the Muslims do. That doesn't seem to be something that we're interested in. It is important for Muslims, for you, the younger generation, to know that based on the vision that we mentioned yesterday, a vision that the developments in this area are going to be much greater with the coming of the 12th Imam, and understanding that we need to move toward that vision from today. This is wrong for us to think, oh, the vision of the Imam is we're going to have all that development. What that means is that we're going to have those developments when the Imam arrives. So we're going to wait. We like all this stuff. We know it's all great. We know it's all good. We would like to see that. We would like to see Shia scientists. We would like to see technologies developed by those who believe in the Imam, but we're not going to see that happen until when? Until the Imam comes. That ideology is wrong. That perception is wrong. When we say that's the vision and we need to move toward that by developing our communities into these fields, we shouldn't just have people that even in the medical field are just taking the research that has been done by non-Muslims, by others, and learn how to do the things that we're told to do and just be a good doctor in the hospital, in the clinic, in our practice to give what we're told to people. That's not enough. We need to have people that are in the research field of that and on the forefront of that, meaning in even the research area, not some basic. No, we should be striving to be developing these sciences and technologies related to them more than the non-Muslim is. The non-Muslims who are driven, for the most part, not everyone, these advancements are generally not driven by what I'm about to say. I'll explain what I mean. But the reason why they're developing is that there's a lot of money, there's a lot of investment. That investment is being put in these sciences and technologies not because the people who are making those investments are genuinely interested in developing these sciences and technologies, because that is going to be causing human life to become more desirable and for human suffering to be reduced, the conditions of life to be better for everyone. That's not their interest. Their interest is capital driven. They are interested in investing the money and being able to multiply that 10-fold, 100-fold, and take it back. That's what they're interested in. Their drive for these developments is making money, capital. The motive of the believer, of the Shia, of the follower of the Imam, of the companion of the 12th Imam in the 21st century is not that. And this is one very important distinction I'm trying to make here, because we have people within the community say, oh, we need to be the best students, we need to be very involved in all of this and so on and so forth, but they're not looking at it from the perspective that I'm trying to present. We're saying we need to be on the forefronts of that as companions of the 12th Imam, for the movement of the 12th Imam. That's a very important part that I'm going to get into and explain a little later in a couple of minutes. But right now, because I'm talking about understanding or developing the sciences, developing those technologies, being the ones that discover new understandings of the natural world, of nature, of biology, of chemistry, of physics, all these different areas. Develop new abilities in the computer sciences. The next chip that's going to be developed for the computers, the brains of these computers that do so much in our lives, should be developed by a companion of the 12th Imam that does a much better job. The leap in the advancement, the amount of advancement compared to all the previous generations of chips should be so much because it was developed by the companion of the 12th Imam. The advancements that can be made with this approach, the leap that we can, the speed of advancement, the quality of advancement, the quantity of advancements, the companions of the 12th Imam, now, not when he arrives, starting now, you, the next generation, when you get into your careers, you need to be thinking along these lines. Whatever field you get into, you've got to become the most advanced in those areas. And don't be content with just getting a job and making money. And no, becoming a researcher, becoming someone that advances these technologies is a process that begins with some study in the university, getting a job, doing that work, but not being content and continuing to advance your abilities in the field that you're in until you reach a point where you realize that there are limits to the area that you've studied and you're doing work in, and you need to raise those boundaries. You need to push those boundaries and go over those and create a new boundary. That's how this happens. You don't plan on and you don't become a researcher in college or in university. You go through that, you get into your job, you start moving forward, you continue your study, your thinking, your awareness of what's going on here, you advance yourself until you reach the boundaries that are there. This is how far we have moved. And then you realize that's too limited. We can push this a little further, and you do that. As companions of the 12th Imam, we need to do that. So now let me move into this idea, this part of it. We understood what we mean by being part of the advancements that are made in the material aspect of life. Okay, the advancements that are made in the sciences and the technologies that are based on those sciences, deciding how we're going to use our understanding to develop what's going to better life, what's going to make life more convenient, more comfortable, more desirable, give us more pleasure in life, reduce the problems, get rid of the problems of the various forms that we have. As companions of the 12th Imam, we need to do that. But what's the difference between doing that as companions of the 12th Imam and doing that as just someone who was born and raised here in the West, someone who's just living here, or even beyond that, someone who's not even Muslim? What's the difference between a non-Muslim driven by their capitalist, their non-Muslim, their non-divine motives to develop all this, and a Muslim, a Shia, a monotheist, someone who believes in God, someone who believes in the Ahlul Bayt, someone who believes in the 12th Imam, someone who realizes that they're working toward a vision of the 12th Imam? What's the difference between these two? Let me explain this also using a little bit of history. One of the mistakes that we make that cause us, that if we even think about moving toward becoming part of developing these sciences and technologies, that we don't do so as Muslims, we don't do so as Shia, we don't do so as companions of the 12th Imam. We don't do so as part of preparation for the Imam. We don't do that. We just do that as a non-Muslim would. We are Muslim, but when it comes to those fields, when it comes to development, when it comes to technologies, then there isn't a difference. We're just doing that the same way that any non-Muslim would. An atheist would do and perform exactly as we are. Even if we were a full-on atheist, we would do things the exact same way, which is incorrect, which is absolutely incorrect. One of the things that causes us subconsciously to behave in that way is a mistake in understanding the history of these developments. It is clear that the developments that we see today in the sciences and technologies started from the period of Enlightenment and then Renaissance in Europe. After the time referred to as Enlightenment and after the Renaissance, you start having something called the Industrial Revolution. Okay, but that Industrial Revolution, that's the beginning of the development of technologies. Okay, the industries started advancing, but the advancement of the industries was a result of the advancement of the understanding of the material realm, the sciences. That was the foundation. That started happening from the time of Enlightenment and the Renaissance. The scientists started working on the chemists, the biologists, the physicists. All these people started developing their fields more than before, and that led to a development, an advancement, a drastic improvement in the industries, and eventually moving forward and forward and forward and so on and so forth. The period of Enlightenment and the Renaissance are also coinciding with the move away from theism, the move away from religion, the move away from God. Secularism is the result of Enlightenment and the Renaissance. From the period of Enlightenment and the Renaissance, people in Europe started moving further and further away from Christianity, belief in God, practicing religion. And the further we have moved, the further they have moved from their religion overall. This has led to the false understanding, incorrect understanding, that in order to advance in these areas, in the sciences and the technologies, you must put aside religion. Religion is a barrier for these developments. Or at best, religion is irrelevant to these technologies and to these advancements. That is a false understanding. That is an incorrect understanding. That is an absolute incorrect understanding. Why? Because they have disconnected the history of Enlightenment and the Renaissance from the history of the world. They have disconnected it. They make it seem like history begins in Europe, and pre-Renaissance and pre-Enlightenment, Europe has none of these advancements, and during and post Enlightenment and Renaissance in Europe, all these advancements start to occur. That's not true. If that were the case, during Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment, during the Renaissance, post-Renaissance, there would be no Industrial Revolution. If all developments were done in Europe then we wouldn't see any of that. None of that would exist. None of that would exist. Absolutely none of it would exist. The reason Europe starts advancing is that pre-Enlightenment, pre-Renaissance, Europe was forced by the religious authorities to stay away from advancements made by the Muslims. The Muslims were the ones, religious scholars, that were also the scholars and the scientists in chemistry, in physics, in medicine, in biology, in geometry, in mathematics, algebra. These scientists, these thinkers that developed these, and pre-Islamic era and post-Islamic era are incomparable. If Europe had to start without the developments of the Muslim world, they could have never advanced to what we see them advancing to today. It would be impossible. The math that was developed in the Muslim world was used by them. They took that prior to Enlightenment and the Renaissance. The religious authorities, because of their antagonism against Islam and the Muslims, they didn't allow for that to be studied and for people in Europe to move forward with that. During Enlightenment and Renaissance, what happened was that Europeans started looking at the advancements made by the Muslims and started developing it further. Sure, they started leaving religion and theism because their religious authorities abused their power and misrepresented their religion, misused the words of the Bible to keep people ignorant of the developments and technologies. But otherwise, the developments and technologies came from the Muslim world that were done by scholars of religion that were also scholars of these fields. It's important for us to note that. The reason why the Europeans are able to advance is because so many steps have been taken by the Muslim world. Leaps in these sciences have been made in the Muslim world. The Europeans take that and start advancing. Yes, they advance without religion. And unfortunately, you see the result of that. Those advancements made by people in Europe without the spiritual advancement led to all the weapons of mass destruction that they developed. Weapons of mass destruction. You know what weapons of mass destruction mean? Weapons of mass destruction are like the atomic bomb. When you drop it, it destroys everyone and everything. In war, you have enemies. You target your enemy. That is understandable. Throughout history, that has been an acceptable thing. For whatever reason, a war starts between two parties. The two parties that are involved, the individuals and the establishments, the bases, for example, military bases, that's part of war. But cutting off water from the civilians, that's been considered a war crime. During a war, you can't do that. Polluting the water so that people who drink it die, that's a war crime. You can't do that even during war. You can't destroy all human life to get to your military objectives. You can't do that. Weapons of mass destruction are biological weapons, chemical weapons, mustard gas. The United States developed, with the developments of the sciences and technologies, They created viruses in labs and put them in insects. They dropped those bombs in the Korean War in North Korea. Go watch the documentaries. The result of developing the sciences and technologies without spirituality, without being the companions of the 12th Imam, without that approach, without wanting, as we said, to serve God's creation for Allah, that is the objective, to get closer to Allah. Allah wants us to improve the life of other human beings. That is a spiritual goal of the companion of the 12th Imam. When you remove that, the sciences and technologies turn into these monstrosities, weapons of mass destruction in the various forms. A companion of the 12th Imam advances their worship of Allah and their understanding of the Quran along with their understanding of the sciences and technologies. A scientist that is a companion of the 12th Imam is like Shaheed Fakhrizadeh. Shaheed Fakhrizadeh is a prime example, is a role model for the type of person we're talking about. Shaheed Fakhrizadeh is a full-on scientist that is responsible for developing the nuclear technologies, sciences, and other sciences, other disciplines that we're not too familiar with right now. We haven't gotten the data as much yet about what else he worked on. But the one that is known is the nuclear technology, which means developments in the sciences locally in the Islamic Republic, and the technologies, developing that without the assistance of anyone. All other countries import things. They developed it all on their own. He developed it as a companion of the 12th Imam. He is someone that, when we look at his character, you see this aspect that I'm telling you about. His worship of Allah, connection with Allah, prayers, dhikr of Allah has improved compared to the ordinary Muslim, while his understanding of the material realm, his work on the technologies has advanced and is above the average. His worship of Allah, his dhikr of Allah, his prayer has advanced and is above average. More importantly, in many ways, and one of the ways that this is the point I'm about to make is more important than the prayer and dhikr, is that it's also the foundation of prayer and dhikr, is developing his understanding of the Quran. If you don't understand Allah from the Quran, then your remembrance of him using the words that you're given are not going to be as advanced. They just can't, because you haven't understood who you're worshiping. You don't understand who you're remembering. Very primitive, very basic understanding of who he is. Very basic understanding of who he is. But when you understand who he is through the verses of the Quran, then when you worship him, when you remember him, it's going to be different. Shaheed Fakhrizadeh is someone that we find his study of Islam, while his field, everyone knows him as a nuclear scientist. But when you look, he's a nuclear scientist that is a companion of the 12th Imam. And how do you see that? His study of Islam. He didn't go to the Hawza, that's not what we're suggesting. If he is a scientist that advances his studies in the sciences, and he learns how to learn that material, he also goes and he's not content with what he knows of Islam. He wants to learn more, and he finds how to learn more. And he starts teaching himself more and more. he starts getting resources to learn more and more. And he advances his understanding and his obedience and his submission. One of the things that's narrated about Shaheed Fakhrizadeh, this martyr, the one that Netanyahu, Mal'un, he mentioned a few times, they're very unhappy with him. See, that's what happens. They talk about scientists and how scientists are so respected, but it makes them angry to know that there are scientists that are companions of the 12th Imam. They assassinated him. They use technology. They use artificial intelligence. They used a gun that they imported into Iran that was connected to the satellite that had the image of Fakhrizadeh in its brain, and was commanded, as soon as that image comes into sight, use precision ammo to shoot this man. They use those technologies to do that. Shaheed Fakhrizadeh, rahmatullah alayh. I don't know how many bullets went into the body of this Shaheed. But one of the things that is said about this Shaheed, one of his comrades, if we may use that word, the other scientists that are also companions of the 12th Imam, that worked with him closely, they said that he really wanted to go to Karbala. He wanted to visit Imam al-Hussein. But because the Zionists were after him, security-wise, it was not wise for him to go. He spoke to Haj Qasim. He said, I really want to go. Haj Qasim Sulaimani, may Allah bless his soul as well. He spoke to him and said, I really want to go. Do you think there's any way of me going? Haj Qasim said, no. Security-wise, there's no way to prepare the grounds for you to go. He said, for me, I will go. It's dangerous, but if I am martyred, there's many like me. So I can go. We can take that risk. If they martyr me, if they kill me, then there's many more. But if they get you, we don't have anyone like you. And this is why we're saying we need to have more Fakhrizadeh type people, companions of the 12th Imam. Shaheed Fakhrizadeh longed for Karbala, dreamt of Karbala. And he lived next door in the Islamic Republic. The only reason he didn't go was for the sake of the 12th Imam, as that was his obligation. Sallallahu alayka ya Mawla ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Madloom. أيها الشهيد بكربلاء عطشانا. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved Imam al-Hussein. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, our beloved oppressed Imam, the Imam who was slaughtered by the Sharia while his mouth was dry of thirst. Ruhi fidaka ya Mawlai. Today is the 2nd of Muharram, the day of the arrival of the family of Imam al-Hussein in Karbala. When they arrived, Imam al-Hussein asked someone found there, "What is the name of this land?" They said, Nainawa. He said, "Is there another name for it?" They mentioned another name. The Imam asked, "Is there a third name?" He said, "Some call it Karbala." The Imam said, "A'udhu billahi min al-karbi wal-bala." Family, this is our last abode. Set up the tents. This is the last place you will see Ali in al-Asghar. This is the last place you will see Abbas. This is the last place you will see Ali in al-Akbar. This is the last place that you'll see Qasim. Today, O women, you arrive here. My sister Zainab, you have Ali al-Akbar to dismount you from the camel. But on the 11th of Muharram, when you want to leave, Zainab, you will be the one assisting the women and children to get onto their bare camels. No Abbas will be there to help you mount your camel. No Ali al-Akbar will be with you to mount your camel. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. يا حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. ऐ चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा, ऐ चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा, ऐ चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा। तुझे देख के मर जाए ना, तुझे देख के मर जाए ना, बीमार है सुहरा, ऐ चांद मुहर्रम के में चला जा, ऐ चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा। घर ज़हरा का लुटने की खबर तूने सुनाई, तुझे देख के रोती है मुहर्रम में खुदाई। 1400 बरस बीते, 1400 बरस बीते, सब करते हैं शिकवा, चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा, चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा। बहनों का तो भाइयों से रिश्ता ही अजब है, तुम भूल गए हमको हुआ कैसा गजब है। इस आस पे जिंदा हूँ, इस आस पे जिंदा हूँ, देखूं तेरा चेहरा, चांद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा, चांद मुहर्रम के में चला जा। वादा जो किया बहन को सीने से लगा के मैं शादी करूँगा तो तेरे पास ही आके मैं 7 मुहर्रम को मैं 7 मुहर्रम को लौटूंगा ना घबरा मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जाए चाँद मुहर्रम के बदली में चला जा या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद.
Thank you, Brother Khashid, for your recitation of the know-how. I would also like to thank Brother Shayan for his recitation of the Quran, Samar and Zuhair and Brother Kamal Rizvi as well for their contribution, and of course, Agha for the wonderful speech and the lecture, which is quite insightful. I urge all of you to join us again tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.